Hello, everybody. It's Wolfang here. Made it through Monday. Woohoo! Today is October the 2nd. 2 more days before we get that emergency alert on your cell phone, on your TV, on your radio, wherever. But that's not what I'm talking about today. Actually, I found an article last night talking about the Old West, and it has to do with hygiene. So bear with me because this is going to be kind of a long one, but it does have pictures. It says, could you survive in the Wild West with these 18 hygiene habits? During the Wild West era in America, pioneers sought opportunities and new beginnings in the Western frontier. However, hygiene practices were far from today's standards, and the lives of the cowboys were anything but glamorous. Exploring their hygiene habits from that time will undoubtedly make you appreciate the advancements and comforts of the 21st century. So let's go on to the next slide. The typical diet. Let's see, it shows the picture. In the Wild West, a frontier cuisine was shaped by location and season. Settlers relied on indigenous plants and local game like rabbits, squirrels, and buffalo. Dried provisions such as flour, beans, and sugar were also staples. Cooking was typically done using Dutch ovens, frying pans, and boiling pots. As settlements expanded, the food options grew accordingly, which makes sense. Even beds were unsanitary. While not all beds in the American frontier were constructed from straw and hay, a significant number of them were. Due to infrequent cleaning, these beds often became infested with seam squirrels. I guess that's bed bugs, I don't know, or lice. However, lice were just one of the numerous insects that plagued the inhabitants of the Old West. Flies were you I just looked this word up. Anyway, flies were abundant, contaminating food with their larvae, while mosquitoes infiltrated poorly insulated structures. Moreover, few people had window screens, allowing any passing insect freely to enter where you lived. They didn't, and back before glass and everything else, I guess. Venereal diseases were very common. In the saloons and establishments of the Wild West, where intimate encounters were common, both men and women often suffered from venereal disease. The lack of information and education about these diseases and limited treatment options created a bleak outlook for those affected. With a general lack of awareness about these diseases, individuals unknowingly continued their usual activities, inadvertently contributing to the spread of infections. While there are rumors about Wild Bill Hickok, we're done. Anyway, contracting such diseases, these claims remain speculative and unverified. And, there was a lot of naughty play going on back then, just like there is today. It really hasn't changed much. We got medication to fix some of it. From bushy beards and long hair to clean cut. In the 19th century, as more dental products became available to the public, new hair care products and styles arose as well. Although the initial look for cowboys and other men in the Wild West tended to consist of scruffy beards and long hair. This changed with the introduction of these products. Men began to view their extra hair as another place that could harbor harmful germs. So many began to cut their hair and shave for a more clean cut look. I wonder how many used a Bowie knife to shave their beards while they're out there in the prairie. I don't know. I don't. Could you have lived back then? The next one says they drank fire water and cactus wine. Back then, many saloons served whiskey that was made up from burnt sugar, liquor, and chewing tobacco, producing a dangerously strong beverage. A nickname for the drink was also firewater. I think the Indians named it firewater. I'm not sure. I'll have to look that up. With cowboys lightning whiskey or lighting, my bad, lighting whiskey on fire to create a reaction to prove that it was strong. Another popular drink at the time was known as cactus wine, which was a combination of tequila and peyote tea. Wow, talk about, I know what peyote is. Don't, I'm pretty sure a lot of you people might, I don't know, you people. I, I didn't mean to offend anybody. Anyway, I do know what peyote is. But that would, man, that's peyote is a hallucinogenic drug, and tequila and the two mixed together. Woo! Could you imagine? Almost all liquor back then was far from potent than they even are today, and there was no shortage of people drinking them. Of course, all these powerful drinks resulted in countless bar fights and deaths. I love these old pictures too. I think that's pretty cool. Dust was inescapable. In the Wild West, dust was inescapable whether you were in or outdoors. Dust storms were frequent and devastating, covering entire towns in a thick layer of dirt and grime. Sarah Raymond Heerden, a young girl who traveled from Missouri to Montana region in the 1860s, reflected in her book Gaze on the Road, Crossing the Plains in 1865. Oh, the dust, the dust. It is terrible. I have never seen it half as bad. It seems to be almost knee deep in places. When we stopped, the boys' faces were a sight. They were covered with all the dust that could stick on. Of course, the presence of so much dust also caused severe respiratory illnesses, which, and I can see that. Women wanted their skin to look as white as possible. For women, a popular look at the time was to keep their skin as white as possible and without blemishes and freckles. Many middle and upper class women did this by either bleaching their skin or keeping out of the sun as much as possible. If they did find themselves outdoor, chances are they wouldn't be seen without a bonnet, gloves, and long sleeves. Unfortunately, not all pioneer women had this luxury and were exposed to the sun regardless. Many women also went against social norms and conformed more to the cowboy way of life. Could you imagine what these people smelt like back then? Finding drinkable water was a feat. Now remember, this goes along with prepping. That's why I'm sharing this. In the Wild West, finding clean water was imperative to survival, especially when traveling. Yet it wasn't easy to come by. Even when people believed they found drinkable water, it was also possible that an outhouse had been built upstream, potentially contaminating the water. And you got to remember that. You have an outhouse, uh, keep it a, keep it as far away from a water source as you can. On the other hand, stagnant water was essentially poison as it usually attracted insects or had already been stepped in by horses. Furthermore, the rainwater that was collected using cisterns was fresh at first, but would eventually become undrinkable over time. Spitting had to be banned. In the Old West, many of the men spit products, and when in a saloon, would spit it directly on the floor where spittoons lined the bar. The saliva on the floor and the spittoons were then covered in sawdust, which became an issue due to respiratory diseases such as pneumonia and tuberculosis. The spit riddled sawdust was a breeding ground for germs. A lot of people slept on the floor when the saloon would rent out space to travelers. For this reason, spitting was banned in some places altogether, and to do so would mean a fine or prison time. Huh. So back then, if you spit on the floor, depending on where you were, they'd throw your ass in prison. Wow. All right. I'll say bandana, a kerchief, neck, whatever. I'm sorry, just bear with me. Served many purposes. One of the most iconic aspects of a cowboy's outfit was his kerchief or bandana, something he couldn't live without. They served a multiple of purposes, such as keeping the dust out of their mouths and nose, protecting their necks from the sun, ears from the cold, and more. Of course, Hollywood also likes to show them as a way for outlaws to hide their faces when committing a robbery. And I have quite a few bandanas. You can use bandanas just exactly like they said to cover your face, to keep dust out of your nose, your mouth. Uh, it's has it, Get some bandanas. Next one, the cowboy stench. After weeks on the trail, many cowboys were described as smelling like their horse. Although this saying led some to believe this was the result of a cowboy being on top of his horse for expanded periods of time. This is mostly an accumulation of normal skin bacteria from not being able to shower. Being so dirty, if a cowboy was unlucky enough to have a cut or abrasion with staph or strep, they had the possibility of an pedigo, although this was not always fatal. These infections were contagious and chronic among cowboys. Impetigo. There's another word I'm going to have to look up. All right. Almost done. Hang in there, people. Men kept their hair long. Although long hair might seem like a hassle to keep clean and something that will make you hotter, it was a popular style among men in the Wild West, with some of the most notable figures of the time sporting long tresses. However, men didn't just let their hair grow as long as they could. When arriving in a town, many cowboys would treat themselves to a trim, a bath, new clothes, and a shave. During the 19th century, shorter hair became the norm among men. Cowboys were prone to infection. With the inability to properly bathe for weeks and even months at a time, few changes of the clothes, and riding on a horse all day, many cowboys suffered from horrendous fungal infections. Talk about some serious monkey butt. Many of these infections appeared in the crotch, buttocks, armpits, and feet region. They were terrible to live with because they severely itched, burned, and often sometimes scratching them with dirty hands and fingernails only led to further bacterial skin infections. I can only imagine. I did ride a horse one time. I never did it again. That's a story I'll share some other time. There was sickness at every turn because of the unsanitary conditions that many people living in the Old West experienced. It was common for diseases to ravage settlements in the American frontier. One of the most prominent was cholera, which was devastating to both Native Americans and settlers. Oh, excuse me, settlers alike. Sickness was at every turn, and it was seen as a miracle if you came across a camp or settlement where there wasn't any diseases at all. According to Sarah Raymond and the book that they talked about a few minutes ago, upon arrival at one camp, there is no sickness in camp at all. It is marvelous how very well we are. I hope it will continue so. All right. Almost done, people. Almost done. Bear with me. Soap wasn't a top priority. An associate of Billy the Kid, Clifford, wrote in a memoir about his life in the American West, even discussing his experience with soap. He described a product called soap weed, which Mexican women would use to wash their hair. It it is made from the yucca plant and supposedly let the women's hair soft and clean and luxurious. While some people used soap weed, many settlers relied on soap made of animal fat. These homemade soaps were known to be particularly harsh and would cause skin irritation. Furthermore, body odor was considered to be just a fact of life, with many believing that having overly clean pores would subject them to germs and diseases. Wow. So you were hip if you were a stinky person. Okay, that was it. All right. Let me get out of there. Anyway, so I think pretty much all of us know the hygiene was it really wasn't there unless you had some freaking money, go to a saloon or wherever where if you were lucky if they had a bathtub, and who knows what the water was like to even take a bath in. I don't know. But could you have lived like that back then? And like they said, being a cowboy, you're out there on prairie for you could be out there for months. I mean, if you got cattle, you gotta keep your cattle together, and I don't know, it's crazy. And the reason why I'm doing this is because if if shit hits the fan, I mean, if it got that bad, we're grid down, we're all screwed. You got to remember about your hygiene. And I don't know, it's that's pretty wild. But I thought I would do a little bit of history. Like I said, I found this article last night. I found it interesting. I hope you guys did too. And I do read some of it before I do my video, but I'd rather not read it and just share it the way just natural. I'm not rehearsing this shit, but so I hope you guys stuck around for hell almost 20 minutes now. It looks like this is Wolfang. Have a great Monday evening. Blessed be. Stay safe, and I'll do another spam report on who knows what. See you later.